Mistakes. It's something as an English learner, it may be on your mind. And today I want to talk to you about some grammar mistakes that even native speakers make. Now, the first thing I want you to be aware of is that it is perfectly okay to make mistakes. It's normal, it's natural. The reason why I'm doing this is just to really show you that it happens all the time. I make mistakes when I'm speaking English or writing English, and you just try to learn from them. Sometimes I think when you're learning a second language, we tend to focus too much on our mistakes, and that really impedes our progress when it comes to, especially when it comes to speaking. So I want to talk to you about some mistakes that I think are common, and native speakers may even make some of these mistakes from time to time. And if you are someone who loves learning more about grammar, building your vocabulary, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. That way I can become your teacher. My name is Wes. The channel is Interactive English. It's all about trying to help you reach your fluency goals. And if you would like to get a copy of these notes that you see right next to me here, check out the link down below in the description. I'll go ahead and throw a link right there in the chat. Join our email community and you will have access to these notes. If you are already a part of our community, I've sent them to you. So check your inbox. So let's look at the first mistake. And the way that I want to do this is I'm going to give you an example. And I want to see if you can tell me what the mistake is. And write it in the chat, write it in the comments. I want you to participate in the lesson. And then I'll talk a little bit about, well, why some people tend to make this mistake. All right, the first one right here. I didn't do nothing. This is a grammar mistake. And again, let me know what you think. Can you identify the mistake? What is the problem with this sentence? And I'm sorry, I really enjoyed seeing this picture of the dog. I feel like it really captures this sentiment. I didn't do nothing. So this sentence right here has, well, there's a problem. And the problem is did not and nothing. We're talking about a double negative. Excellent. I can't get anything past you guys. Perfect. So I did not do nothing. This is an example of a double negative. In this case, if you're talking about using the negative did not, you would want to use anything. We use anything with negative statements. And if you want to use nothing, you're going to use it with an affirmative statement. I did nothing. But sometimes, again, just in conversation, you may hear this, especially if you're watching a TV show, movie. They try to capture the essence of a character, and they may even intentionally put a double negative in there. But if you're unfamiliar with the meaning of a double negative, this is a statement that contains two negative words. And I thought this was a great little comic right here to follow up on that sentence. I didn't do nothing. And if this were a jury of English majors, they say, ooh, a confession. So basically, because we have that double negative, it's almost like you are then saying the affirmative. I didn't do nothing might imply that, well, you did something in that case, which is why they're saying, ooh, a confession. The reason for this, why this may come out from time to time, if you're a native speaker or even an English learner, is that we are exposed to double negatives. And you may not even think about it or realize it. To give you an example of double negatives that you may have heard or come across, you don't have to look any further than music. So there are so many songs out there that would use double negatives even in the song title. So I'm just going to talk about some of these. That first one, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet by Bachman Turner Overdrive. I really like this song. It's a great song. You ain't seen nothing yet. And even this phrase it's basically an expression that you could use this if maybe you do something, you perform well on some task or in some activity. and somebody's giving you praise and you're like, well, look, I can do much better. Wait until the next time. I could tell that person, look, you ain't seen nothing yet. Just wait until next time. I'm going to even exceed your expectations. And you could use this phrase to say that. But again, it's a double negative. You ain't seen nothing yet. That song by the Rolling Stones, I can't get no satisfaction. Double negative. This song right down here by Pink. I actually haven't heard this song, but never gonna not dance again. It's an interesting sentence statement. Never gonna not dance again. Double negative. And then Marvin Gaye, ain't no mountain high enough. This is part of the language. People use this casually, informally. It is something that you may come across, but ultimately people internalize that information and then they're having a conversation and it just may come out and somebody may use a double negative or you hear them use a double negative. Again, all of these mistakes, it's something that I'm also guilty of as well. And if you are somebody who makes mistakes, hit that like button. Let me know. See how many likes there are, how honest people are when it comes to making mistakes. So the next grammar mistake that I want to share with you is right here. Here's the sentence. I want you to look at this sentence and tell me what you think the problem is. This line is for people with 10 items or less. What is the issue with this sentence? And I think because I'm telling you these are grammar mistakes, I think maybe they'll be a little easier to identify, and that's great. I want you to be able to see the sentence and try to identify the issue or the problem. But once again, this is a grammar mistake that I hear quite often among English learners as well as native speakers, and I make this mistake all the time. I often catch myself after I make the mistake and be like, okay, yeah, I used the wrong word. So the key word in here is less. This line is for people with 10 items or less. We're talking about items. That is a count noun. And when we use count nouns, we're going to use fewer. Excellent. I see everybody. I think you guys got that one. Yeah, this is something that's very common. What happens is, and I would say, again, you just want to be conscious of what's going on here. So just to clarify, fewer is used with count nouns. There are fewer boys than girls in the class. Fewer people live in the city than before. We can create more energy with fewer resources. Less is used with non-count nouns. My colleague was less critical than my boss. It rains less and less each year. She seems less interested than before. What I think happens is overwhelmingly, when I hear this mistake being made and when I make the mistake, people use less when they should use fewer. It's not really the other way around, and that people end up using fewer when they should use less. This is what tends to happen. Instead of using fewer, people end up saying less. And what I wanted to show you with these images right here, you can see this is in places, this is in the United States right here. All of these checkout lines, like this one, Express, 10 items or less. Express checkout, 10 items or less. Cash only, please. Right here, 10 items or less. Express lane, 10 items or less. If you're in the United States or you travel there and you go to the grocery store, I want you to look for this and see if you find one of these signs and they're using the correct grammar. But this is something that you will find quite often in stores around the U.S. The next mistake that I want to talk to you about is this one right here. Let me see if you can identify and tell me what the problem is. I thought this was appropriate because in the U.S. it is an election year, and that's where this sentence, regardless of what the polls say, we're going to win bigly. What do you think is the problem with this sentence? And to give you a little bit of a hint, there may be more than one problem. Irregardless of what the polls say, we're going to win bigly. Once again, this is a mistake that's quite common. I'm guilty of this as well. And I feel like everybody can kind of relate to this mistake. And I see some people are saying, yes, okay, regardless, bigly. There's one other issue with this sentence right here. And, well, it's gonna as well. So these are, I said they're not real words, kind of. And let me try to put a finer point on that when I say kind of. Because it's one of those things in English, there's not much of a standard. The language is constantly evolving, and we're adding new words each and every day. And then as those words become used more often, they tend to become accepted among different English varieties. And at that point, you kind of have to ask yourself, well, if so many people are making this mistake, is it really a mistake? Should this become an accepted part of either spoken or written English? And this is kind of a debate that's constantly going on. So the three words in there, irregardless, gonna, and bigly, are the ones that I wanted to talk to you about. So let's start with irregardless. It means the same thing as regardless. The meaning of this word, despite not being affected by something. Irregardless, regardless, they mean the same thing. Now, technically speaking, we just talked about double negatives. You see, when saying irregardless, it has that prefix and suffix. The prefix, that IR, also can mean like a negative, irregular. And when we add less, it means without, tasteless. So the word in and of itself is a little bit of a double negative, but it means the same thing as regardless. And here are just some examples, some headlines talking about this debate between irregardless and regardless. So regardless of what you think, irregardless is a word. Merriam-Webster just recognized irregardless as a real word. Is irregardless a real word? We asked our journalist as battle rages on. I will confess, and I don't know where it came from, I end up using irregardless from time to time. I'll be talking with my wife and I'll say, well, irregardless, and then make my statement. And she always corrects me. She's like, why are you saying irregardless? Just say regardless. So once again, just want to point out, it's perfectly fine to make mistakes. I make them quite often. I think when it comes to teaching a foreign language, it's really a humbling experience because you start to recognize just how often you might make mistakes, but I'm constantly learning new things. Gonna. It's the reduction of going to. It's used often in spoken English. I use it all the time. I've done several lessons talking about using gonna. I think it's natural. It's normal. The issue that I would point out, and the reason I highlighted it, is because even though we use it in spoken English, I would recommend, I would avoid it when writing. But this is something that I think people, especially learners, you end up seeing because when writing text messages, you may see somebody write gonna, Gonna, or song lyrics, and they use gonna. And then the next thing you know, I'm giving an exam to my 11th grade students, and I see gonna in an essay. And I'm like, oh, no, that's just not right. So even in this, just to give you an example, this is from Cambridge, gonna, spelled the way it's often spoken, going to. What are you going to do about it? So even though I would definitely encourage you to use this when you're speaking. It's natural, it's normal. Just be careful when you're writing. I would say at this point, it's not accepted. All right, so the last one, bigly. I told you it's an election year. We're going to win bigly. So this word is, and there are many words like this that are kind of just made up. And then people start using it, and it's like, well, it's a question of, well, should this be a word now? So bigly is something that I think was popularized by Trump back in 2016. He throws out these weird words all the time. And what I really like about this is that people will use bigly just to be funny or sarcastic. And even when I look this up, I found this entry saying bigly. It is it's very informal, and even the dictionary lists it as being humorous, using it as that adverb, like to a great extent. And the example sentence they gave, we are going to reduce taxes bigly. So you could use this, or you may hear somebody use this if they're trying to be funny. As somebody who's learning the language, again, I would recommend that you avoid words like this, because if you're talking to someone, they may think that you're just making a mistake. So it really depends on the context. If you know the other person, they can tell you're trying to make a joke, and then you could talk about something being bigly. But there are, like I said, there are many words out there that are kind of on the fence as to like, well, is this accepted? Is it not accepted? But something to keep in mind and even listen for. I told you it's an election year. See if you hear bigly being thrown out from time to time. Mistake number 4. All right, let's see if you can identify what's wrong with this. Simple, straightforward. I ate more. What is the problem with this sentence? And I'll add to this and give a little more context. But probably looking at this, you are thinking like, look, this sentence is a little strange. It's a little awkward. And that is because it's really kind of incomplete. And what I would say is that you need to add I ate more than and make it a comparison, a comparative sentence. So for example, I ate more than my cousin. I ate more than I did yesterday. And what really I'm talking about are these incomplete comparisons. And people are using these comparative adjectives without following it with than as well as something to compare it to. Now, the reason why I think you may hear statements like this, and I would say, well, it's not necessarily incorrect, like the one right here. Our washing machine is better, faster, and more reliable. So there is no than. This is not a comparative sentence. It's an incomplete comparative. But when in this context of advertising or marketing, it's basically implied that the listener knows what it is that we're comparing. So if I'm saying this, like I'm advertising, our washing machine is better, faster, and more reliable, you probably know that I'm comparing this to other washing machines out there. So the incomplete comparisons is something that you will come across in advertising and marketing because it's kind of implied. But again, people make mistakes. I do this where I kind of start talking and I don't finish my thought, or I don't really provide a full context. And people are like, wait a second, what are you talking about? What's going on? So something to keep in mind. The next mistake that I want to go over with you is right here. Me and my neighbor had a property dispute several years ago. What is the problem with this sentence? Me and my neighbor had a property dispute several years ago. Again, the fact that you can see it, I think it probably makes it a little easier to identify. You know that there's a mistake with this sentence. And I do hear this mistake in English learners. Native speakers from time to time will also make this mistake. And the issue is, yes, with that subject pronoun or the lack of a correct subject pronoun. So instead of me and my neighbor and I. I think you guys rock that, identified it. So we're talking about subject and object pronouns. And really the mistake that I think people end up making is when they're talking like in the first person. And they use me instead of using I, because we often may be talking about ourselves. So use I when the pronoun is the subject. My girlfriend and I are getting married. Jim, Kate, and I will give the presentation. My daughter and I played a game. Use me when the pronoun is the object. The teacher gave extra homework to John and me. She told my wife and me that she's pregnant. Send the offer to my colleague and me. at the very bottom here, just something to keep in mind, especially I'd say when you're writing, but even when you're speaking, it is preferred to always put I and me last in the list. I want to give you my personal opinion here as well. I think when we're talking about the subject, I definitely think it's preferred to put I at the end. If you do not do that, it's not incorrect. Grammatically speaking, you could put I at the beginning of the list. But once again, I would say it's preferred. In this case, it's more common. That is what people do most of the time. So again, that's what I would say to you, that it may sound a little awkward if you don't. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Put I at the end when making a list. Me is the same way, but I think you can get away with it. I think it's more common that people might put me at the beginning of a list when it's the object as opposed to I. And I do this as well. But just food for thought, it's preferred to put I and me last in the list. To give you some examples of mistakes, I pulled up Twitter. Again, Twitter is not the best place to probably learn grammar, or I should say X. It is X now. And these are different mistakes that you could easily find. I just put in me, and you come as the subject, and you come up with all these examples. Me and my friend are going to go and play pool. So excited. Me and my wife trying to decide what we should do for dinner. Me and my friend are excited to watch the majors tonight. So in each of these sentences, it should be I, and we should use that subject pronoun. But like I said, that is a mistake that I hear learners often make, and even native speakers from time to time, me and something, and they should be using the subject pronoun I. Mistake number 6 is right here. This curry is more spicy than before. What is the problem with this sentence right here? What do you think? Let me know in the chat, in the comments. I want you to participate in the lesson. This curry is more spicy than before. So we talked about incomplete comparatives, and just looking at this, you probably can see that, oh, this is a comparative sentence. But there is a problem with that comparative. This curry is not more spicy, it should be spicier. So that is the spicy, spicier is the correct comparative. This curry is spicier than before. However, I think it's a common mistake. People would say more spicy instead of using the correct comparative, spicier. So again, I'm going to go through this quickly. There's a lot that we could talk about when it comes to comparatives, but we usually add ER to shorter words, 1 or 2 syllables, and add IER to words that end in Y. Spicy. It ends in Y. It's a 2-syllable word. Spicier. Loud. Louder. We use more with longer words. I know that's vague, but really words with 2 or more syllables, but more specifically probably 3 or more beautiful, more crowded. Of course, there are exceptions when it comes to comparatives. I put a couple down there. Fun, you would use more fun. Likely, more likely. And then there are also irregular comparatives. There's a lot that we could talk about, but let's focus on that spicy and more. And why? Why do people, including myself, why do we make this mistake? So it really has to do with more. Now, think about this word, more, as a determiner. It means a greater or additional amount or degree of. In the example sentence up there, she poured herself more coffee. All right, that is how we use more. Also used as a determiner, these are some other headlines. You should eat more spicy food. More loud booms may be heard across San Diego. So in these examples right here, we're using more followed by that noun, more spicy. But more means a greater or additional amount. More loud booms. Again, it means a greater or additional amount. And I think this is just my theory of what's going on. Our brains, whether we're talking about math or language, our brains are trained to recognize patterns. So in this case, you read things, your brain picks up on these patterns. You see sentences like this. Oh, you should eat more spicy food. More loud booms can be maybe heard across San Diego. And you're using more as a determiner, and then it kind of just it ends up moving into those comparative sentences, and somebody may make the mistake when speaking and say more spicy. Because if we add to this, let me get rid of those article headlines. More as an adverb. Again, we're talking about, it says, if you can see it, I know it's small, forming the comparative of adjectives and adverbs, especially those of more than one syllable. And the example sentence for them, enthusiasm is more important than talent. So once again, I think that you end up coming across more being used with these words. Your brain picks up on those patterns, and then you say a comparative sentence like this one right here, and it just comes out. This curry is more spicy than before. Now, it's one of those mistakes that I don't think is, especially in spoken English, that somebody's going to be like, oh, wow, that was really bad. It is something that happens. I hear native speakers make this mistake from time to time. And again, just to just to let you know, I am not perfect. I make this mistake. And it's same with less and fewer. It's one of those mistakes that after I say it, a lot of times I catch it and think to myself, okay, I made a mistake and I used the wrong comparative. But just something to keep in mind. So the next mistake number 7, this is more for writing. And here is the sentence that I want you to look at. There are a lot of fun things you can do at the park, i.e. ride bikes, have a picnic, and climb trees. What is the problem with this sentence? And again, this sentence is written. The issue is that this is a writing mistake. This is not really a part of spoken English, or it's not like a mistake that ends up being made in spoken English. And maybe this is too much of a hint that I'm giving you as far as like what you should focus on and why this is a problem. So I say that this is not a mistake that ends up being made in spoken English, and it's more written English, because we're talking about that abbreviation, the IE. And when you're speaking, you wouldn't say like IE when you're having a conversation. And the mistake is that it's the wrong one. In this example, I should be using the abbreviation EG. And even in spoken English, I'm not going to say EG. Instead, I would just say, for example. So EG versus IE. These are Latin abbreviations. EG is used when you want to list examples and be more specific. It really means the same thing as for example. And if I'm having a conversation, that is the phrase that I would say. I would say, for example, ride bikes, have a picnic, climb trees. So the sentence really should be like, there are a lot of fun things you can do at the park. E.g., for example, ride bikes, have a picnic, and climb trees. One thing about using EG, you're going to use this when making a list, but it's really going to come at the end of a sentence, and that is when you're going to list things out. IE, on the other hand, is used to clarify a statement, and if you want to think about the meaning, it really means the same as like in other words. So here is an example with IE. There are a lot of fun things you can do at the park, i.e. have a picnic to have a relaxing time. So basically, there are a lot of fun things. In other words, have a picnic to have a relaxing time. It's like I can just replace those two. I'm not making a list, and I'm going to use this more. It's going to come in the middle of a sentence. So once again, this is more about writing than anything else. It's not something you're not going to have a conversation and say EG or IE. This is more about writing. So that is those are the 7 mistakes that I wanted to go over with you. And again, just point out that it's common to make mistakes. You should not get hung up on your mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and I thought it would be maybe helpful to talk about some of the mistakes that I make, as well as some other native speakers as well. And again, just keep that in mind. And maybe if you feel like you're making these same mistakes, it's always good to learn that and then try to avoid them in the future. But in general, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. If you enjoyed this lesson and you learned something new, hopefully some of this grammar was new. I feel like some of it's a little more advanced. Please let me know. Hit that like button. You can also write to me in the comments. I always love hearing from you guys, and I try to get back to you as often as I can and answer your comments. So thank you for being with me today. I hope you learned something new. And of course, I will be back very soon in the future for another amazing lesson. Thank you. Just give some quick shout outs. Thanks for being here. Lolly, Takayo, Angela, Patricia, Cinderella, Marie. Excellent. Thank you guys for being here. Hope you have a wonderful day